back for the blockchain sessions. Today I'm joined by Jordan Last.
Thanks for having me.
And today we're going to be talking coding languages and what we kind of see as like the future.
My company is called Demergent Labs. We're building open source developer tooling, basically bringing traditional web languages, JavaScript, TypeScript, Python, to this blockchain ecosystem, starting with ICP, the Internet Computer Protocol. I kind of fell in love with blockchain around 2017. I just thought like these seemed to be the ultimate distributed decentralized systems, and there was some kind of just latent power that drew me to it. And I'd always loved open source software. I always had kind of loved permissionless innovation. The internet protocols, TCP/IP, always fascinated me. Learned a lot about all that stuff in studying at university. So yeah, when I entered the space, started digging around, learned tons about Bitcoin, of course, learned tons about Ethereum, started getting more low level, learning about for example, the Ethereum virtual machine. Turns out the Ethereum virtual machine, basically, you can compile anything you want, technically speaking, down into the EVM bytecode format, but that infrastructure doesn't necessarily exist. And it takes a lot of effort to create compiler infrastructure for these different types of bytecode formats or instruction set architectures. So basically, the only language for Ethereum and its ecosystem, which there's a vast Ethereum ecosystem outside of Ethereum that still uses the Ethereum virtual machine. Basically, the only language is Solidity. That's what most people are doing, most people are learning. But there's a problem with Solidity. Obviously, it's functioning quite well. Many people know it now. But whenever you introduce a new language like this, you're basically starting from scratch with expertise, content like YouTube videos, blog posts, tutorials, experts. You have to basically create all this from scratch, and that's a very, 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 very difficult thing to do. Ethereum is doing it, which is quite impressive, but there are some disadvantages to it. On the other hand, imagine if Ethereum had and there are many technical reasons for why you might want to introduce a new language. So it's not like it's all bad, but I just think it's very risky and there's some drawbacks. So imagine if Ethereum had started with a Python or a TypeScript or a JavaScript or even a Rust or C++, you would have inherited decades of everything I was just talking about. Decades of experience and expertise and documentation and everything. JavaScript came out, I believe, 1996. Python, I believe, like 1991, early 90s. These things have been around for decades now. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, I want to bring all of those advantages into this decentralized, blockchain computing ecosystem. So yeah, if you're not a developer, let me try to explain this. There are so many different programming languages, and we have to learn a lot of them. And though once you learn a couple, they're all very similar. It's not too hard to jump to a new one, but there's a difference between kind of jumping to a new one and being, I guess, proficient to really mastering it and really feeling comfortable with it. It's kind of like spoken language. Like, for example, I speak Spanish, and I would say I'm fluent, but I don't prefer to speak Spanish. I still can't express myself as well. There's idioms and phrases. I'll probably never be as expressive in Spanish as in English. And so if I have the chance, I want to work in English. I want to, that's where I'm going to really hit my flow. I think it's the same in programming languages. It's I could learn this esoteric new thing, but the cost to doing that, the friction to doing that, it kind of hurts. So it'd be nice to give people the choice. I want to give people the choice to just bring whatever they're fluent in already with them. In our case, for the Internet Computer Ecosystem ICP, that is enabling TypeScript and JavaScript and enabling Python. So why those languages? JavaScript is arguably the most popular language in the entire world. Python is actually also arguably the most popular. I'm not sure which one is best. Probably depends on which metrics you're looking at. TypeScript is actually not far below either. So TypeScript is similar to JavaScript. It just makes it more safe in certain ways. I want to bring those languages to allow I think together there's probably, I would guess, 30 to 50 million developers that already have expertise and knowledge in these languages. So let's just open the floodgates. Let's just let people bring these languages in. And, we don't have to get rid of Solidity or any new language that the blockchain space is trying to create. Because I do believe the languages we already have are not perfect, That's not what I'm saying. We do want to innovate, but you have to be careful. There are risks to creating new languages. There's a risk of no one actually wanting to adopt it. So, for example, in the ICP ecosystem, there's a completely new language that was created called Motoko. Lots of people in our ecosystem are using it, but we're not the biggest community yet. We haven't hit necessarily that traction curve where it's like, we just know this is going to succeed. So it's a little dangerous to, expect people to learn this language. So we'll provide an alternative. Now going into the broader ecosystem, obviously, if you want to just get into the Ethereum ecosystem, which is very large, Solidity is great. And you'll have a hard time outside of Solidity for the next little bit. But there's a new trend that I'm personally seeing. And in the Bitcoin space, for example, is starting its kind of layer 2 revolution, basically. Ethereum has been going on that for a year or two now. What's interesting about the layer 2s is that we're not restricted by the virtual machine, or I guess the scripting language, the bytecode, the opcodes of the layer 1. The layer 2 can actually have its own execution environment, its own virtual machine that's different than the layer 1. And you can still have the layer 1 security through, fraud proofs or validity proofs. We call these, optimistic or zero knowledge rollups usually. One very popular virtual machine that various projects are using is called WebAssembly, or WebAssembly virtual machines, or the WebAssembly bytecode format. And WebAssembly is quite fantastic because it's a universal compilation target that translates very nicely into low-level machine code. The idea is that hopefully eventually we can run most, if not all, languages in WebAssembly. Even if WebAssembly doesn't become the end-all be-all, I think it has a very high chance. It's implemented in basically all browsers. It's implemented in Node.js. It's implemented in ICP and various other blockchains, so it's doing very well. There are other virtual machines that are these universal targets as well. RISC-V, for example, is an instruction set architecture that the blockchain ecosystem is kind of starting to adopt with the RISC-0 project in particular. They're a zero-knowledge virtual machine, so not only will it execute your code, it will produce a proof that code was executed correctly, and you can cryptographically verify that, which is quite interesting and powerful. So yeah, basically, I guess what I'm trying to say is, up until this point, Solidity's been the king. A new domain-specific language has been what everyone's rallying around. But moving forward, I think these universal virtual machines with these universal compilation targets, I'm imagining they're going to continue to gain in popularity. So if you want to enter the space thinking, forward thinking, master TypeScript. If not TypeScript, maybe master Python. Those languages are going to help you not only within blockchain, I hope, but in any field of that needs programming, or software engineering. In my opinion, if you want to be very intense, I would do Rust. Rust is probably going to replace C++, has many advantages. So all of this is not new to software developers. Everyone knows about these languages and I guess their advantages and disadvantages. Maybe the main point I'm trying to make is don't think of blockchain as some new esoteric programming environment that has nothing to do with what you were already doing in other fields. I'm hoping that more and more blockchain is just an extension of, regular software engineering. That's kind of how I'm looking at the future. Probably be my recommendation. Another interesting phenomenon that is happening is the advent of AI and these large language models. They're relatively capable in their programming capabilities. It's quite impressive what they can do. It's also sadly impressive what they cannot do. So I use them every day, but there's no way that they can replace me. There's like a 0% chance. They're not doing that much for me when we speak relatively. Are they a better search engine? Yes. Can they actually help me debug problems? Yes. And I could probably be using them better. I think there are other people with better setups. Based on my feeling, and obviously with exponential improvements, I might be thinking about it incorrectly, but I feel like we'll be working alongside these AIs for years to come. So I don't think it's wise to think that AI is going to just be doing all of our programming. If you're interested in the technology field, if you want to be an expert, then just be on the cutting edge, right? Make yourself the expert in what the AIs can't do. And that's personally what I plan to do until I become a lumberjack or a farmer. But I think that's a few years out.
I'm not a developer by any means, but some things I've heard with AI, the native coding language for AI is Python. What it kind of gravitates towards, unless you give it a specific language.
It depends. I think there's a lot of experience with Python in the world, so there's a lot written on the internet. So yes, I assume there'll be better at Python than other languages, but they're also very good at other languages as well.
Yeah, and I've seen at least ChatGPT start like recognizing Motoko, which I thought was pretty cool. To your point with can AI replace a developer of your stature? I don't think that's going to be the case for the coming years, at least. With as much as AI advances, it'll be interesting to kind of see that play out. It's more of like a complementary tool because it's not going to be able to develop on a protocol like what you're doing.
And I'm not even concerned with it replacing me. Like, I want it to replace me.
Oh, yeah.
If AI can do the level of tasks that I'm doing, that means it is replacing so many unnecessary and horrible things in our world. Like, that means no one's filing taxes by themselves anymore, right? You don't have to hire people to do that, which is a huge drain on the economy. In my opinion, it's not productive work. I don't know. There's just so many examples. So I want that to happen. And I think the world's going to be a much more abundant place once that happens. So personally, I'm not afraid. Yeah, in the meantime, I want it to help me more and more. And I'm actually a little bit frustrated at how slow the progress is, because I can see the potential, and I'm still writing a lot of code by hand and still have to do my taxes.
Yeah, it's interesting to see it pan out, and I have noticed like some devs like not willing to even use it. When you're assigning the AI like a specific task, you have to go in and debug everything that it coded
Yep.
up anyway,
Yep.
and sometimes that can be more troublesome than it is helpful.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And this is getting better. Like, they're starting to integrate. There's a new IDE called Cursor. So it's like the AI is integrated into your development environment. Some people are liking that. So eventually it's going to get better and better. But yeah, if you don't have that, then you're copying and pasting and you have to explain everything. And sometimes it's like, I'll just write it myself. But I was going to say, yeah, as it gets better and better, my personal prediction or feeling is source code, like, Python source code, JavaScript source code, whatever we're writing mostly. I think that's going to be the new assembly. Just a little history on that. Back in the day, programmers used to write very, very low level code. Even before assembly, I believe they were writing in the machine code, right? Assembly made it a little bit more human readable, but it was still super low level. And then languages such as, C and maybe some predecessors came around. And that was kind of the beginning of these very high level languages that we do now. And it makes us very productive. Okay, so I think AI is going to be writing most of the source code for us. And possibly it might be able to skip the source code altogether. We might just be able to compose models together. But what I think will happen, possibly, is, because it's writing most of this for us, when it has problems that it can't resolve, we will come in, review it all, and handwrite maybe little pieces. In that way, the source code is kind of becoming assembly, because it's like we generally don't go there. We don't need to go there. But every once in a while, if our models don't compose appropriately or the code they wrote is wrong, it's like, okay. With my expertise, I'm going to go surgically write this little piece.
When someone's not proficient in a coding language, it can lead to some issues. Do you think that's kind of contributed to a lot of the hacks that have happened over the years? As obviously some networks have different security measures, and that could be something that's contributed to that. But overall, developers in the blockchain space, as they're figuring out how this technology is going forward, do you think that has kind of led to more security risks when someone's not necessarily proficient and they're trying to work with new disruptive technology?
Honestly, I haven't. I would probably have to do a empirical analysis to know. But my feeling is that that's not the reason most hacks happen, because there is a lot of auditing that's going into the space. Responsible projects do these audits. Obviously, if you're irresponsible, I imagine there are hacks from that as well. Even with JavaScript and Python, and maybe even Rust. Actually, Rust, it'd be interesting to know how many Rust programs get hacked. But it's probably because our languages are inherently unsafe, and it's very difficult to make them safe, even with multiple people poring over the code. So I'm not sure it's a lack of experience, because even if you're super experienced in TypeScript, you can have these bugs. So I think we need better languages, but when you make a new language, you just have all those problems. So it's I don't know, it's nuanced.
Is there any other forward-looking statements that you think that people could probably expect for the blockchain space in the coming years?
I think blockchain and crypto will probably play out similar to the advent of other technologies, where there's so much hope and so much promise and a lot of speculation with that. And at first, it doesn't really play out like that. It's like, I guess it wasn't as cool as we thought. For example, I think stablecoins will probably be the first true world killer use case, but it will just be like mostly payments. And so that kind of doesn't feel like the grand, I don't know, world changing decentralization of everything. I think it will just start with a couple things, and that might be a little bit disappointing. But probably, I don't know, 5-10 years after that, maybe we'll hit now it's obvious that you would never deploy a piece of software off of a decentralized network or, zero knowledge or whatever, because it's just inherently insecure. So I would say just temper expectations in the next few years. Keep working towards just, getting this infrastructure going and the first couple use cases. And then I would expect really world-changing stuff after that. That's just my own personal speculation. I don't know. So
yeah, that's fair. I do notice the ordinals hat. Are you building anything with ordinals? Are you a collector of ordinals or anything like that?
I basically don't use any blockchain technology. I just develop it.
Okay.
I'm waiting for something that really pulls me in where it's like, I have to use this. So I do own crypto. I was actually at the first Ordinals meetup. I believe it's the first in February of 2023 because I was hanging out with Bob Bodley, was really getting into Bitcoin at the time. So I was there, and what I love about Ordinals and what's happening in Bitcoin is, to me, Bitcoin was dead development-wise, like for software engineering and new ideas for a long time, basically until 2023. And then Ordinals just sparked, like, at least people are doing something. At least there's some spark of creativity and ingenuity, and that's at least interesting to me.
Why do you think it took up until 2023 for these things to start making changes when Bitcoin came out long ago?
The Bitcoin, I guess, virtual machine or scripting language is very restrictive. That restrictive nature is actually what led Vitalik Buterin to create Ethereum. There were many projects that were trying to do more with Bitcoin around the time, and it was just very, very difficult. So you had forks, but you also had other protocols, I believe, really on top. Ethereum came out to be extremely expressive, and Bitcoin just kind of stayed how it was. Mm-hmm. I believe in 2021, I think that's when Taproot came out. Also, I'm not an expert on the Bitcoin stuff, so I could be wrong, but that is what led to being able to store much larger amounts of data. So that's part of what you needed. So even up until, it's only been a couple years since that. So it was about 2 years after that. I think Ethereum actually showed Bitcoin the use cases. NFTs were an Ethereum creation. And also all the roll-up stuff, the optimistic roll-ups, the fraud proofs, the zero-knowledge roll-ups, that's what people are trying to do now in Bitcoin. All of that was innovated in the Ethereum ecosystem, essentially. And that has been brewing for the last couple of years. So it's kind of sad when it takes so long for certain things to happen. But, Taproot had to come out in 2021. The rollups had to mature a bit. The NFTs had to have their time. And now it's like, finally, they could have done it a little bit earlier, but I guess 2022 is when they probably started hacking on it. That's when it was, I guess it just came out.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And while we're on the Bitcoin subject, what do you like about Chainkey Bitcoin, and how do you see it useful going forward?
Yeah, so ICP has some interesting threshold protocols. A subnet, which is just a collection of right now 13 to 40 nodes that run a consensus mechanism. So ICP has threshold ECDSA, which allows you to sign Bitcoin and Ethereum transactions and any other ECDSA chain. Actually, I think maybe just today or yesterday, the threshold Schnorr has gone live on ICP in beta form. So there's like a test key or like a beta key that you can use. So hopefully soon that will actually come out live. And Schnorr is another signature scheme that Bitcoin uses. Yeah, what's nice about that is you don't have to have a single private key on one computer to sign transactions. So we can now make cloud applications on ICP using decentralized private keys. So that's interesting. That's good. It's a little bit interesting, though, to analyze the security model. There's a project that just came out called Bitcoin Layers, which is analyzing various layers on top of Bitcoin. ICP, this is actually quite a favor or a blessing. It's remarkable that ICP is in the running as a sidechain amongst projects like Stacks that have been around for years, when ICP isn't even Bitcoin focused. So ICP is considered a sidechain by this project, which is really cool. And they've done an analysis, and you have to think about how many nodes are custody these things and the security risk. So it's becoming a sidechain, it looks like, and I think that's That's interesting.
I think it can be useful. Obviously, I know you've been outspoken with CKBTC, but yeah, as far as like CKBTC against the security risks that come with it, does it get more adopted than like a Lightning Network? Kind of like your thought on that, just because like the speed, the less fees, and so on for like daily use. It seems like
Yeah.
it could be more realistic.
It's really hard to predict what the market will actually adopt. And I feel like I'm very bad at it. I love getting deep into the technicals. So if I had to just guess, just with that caveat, it's going to be very difficult for CKBTC to get adoption because of its security model. Lightning, you can say what you want to say, and sure, we can analyze and keep thinking about it. But it's generally accepted as extremely secure by the Bitcoin community because of its, I guess, very close, tight-knit security relationship to the Bitcoin layer 1.
Okay.
CKBTC doesn't have that. It is a sidechain. You're going to be bridging basically into it. And there are already other bridging protocols as well. WBTC, for example, it does have like something like over 1 billion of BTC locked in it. So maybe CKBTC could have a similar TVL, but ICP is a much smaller community. It will be difficult. Yes, the transactions are much quicker, which maybe could allow us to do useful things, but Bitcoin is not good as a payment mechanism right now because it's so volatile.
Yeah.
So it's not really its use case at the moment. Decades from now, hopefully we can use cryptocurrencies as actual currencies, but it will be difficult, I think.
Yeah, that's fair. One of the ways I've seen Bitcoin used is actually at bars, whether it was like Puerto Rico or PubKey in New York. They will accept Bitcoin for like a transaction, whether you're buying food or a beer. And one of the ways that I thought it would be unique, well, I guess not unique, but like to see CKBTC used instead of collecting like a big Bitcoin network fee. If you're buying a water bottle from a store or a beer or a soda or whatever, you're not inheriting that network fee for soda that's might be $3 or $4,
Yeah.
and you're paying $3, $4, or $5 fee for that same
I mean,
soda.
around like 2020, I came up with this personal hypothesis that Bitcoin is probably going to be used more on other chains than it ever is on Bitcoin itself. And at the time, I even thought maybe the Bitcoin network would possibly go away because of its security issues, but Bitcoin, the asset, would live on because it would be bridged into all these other things. And this might be the case with all the L2s and with the different layers and with CKBTC sidechains and such. Bitcoin maybe has much more utility outside of it. So if it's going to be used as a currency, yeah, it can't take an hour to settle with high fees.
I mean, that becomes too risky to business owners.
It doesn't work.
I mean, waiting for a transaction, it's like, oh yeah, you got an IOU coming. So, especially if they're not used to the technology and they're waiting for the transaction hash to come, and then all of a sudden they're like, well, is this payment coming in? Or, like just people that aren't used to it daily. I mean, I've sent Bitcoin to a wallet of mine and I get like sick to my stomach sometimes because I'm like, did I send it to the right address? Like it's taking 30 minutes and then I'm watching it through the mempool. Whereas like when I use ICP, like it's like right there. So I'm like, oh, this is that to me is nice as a user. But I think that this is all good for the conversation that we had. So I appreciate your time, Jordan. What has been your favorite side event or conference part of your trip?
There was a Starkware Bitcoin layers meetup. It was just a small group, very smart people there. That's what I like the best.
Yeah. And anyone you'd like to shout out, or
I guess Bob Bodley for really diving into Bitcoin and taking me along with him a little bit. And then really the Bitcoin Layers project, I just think is excellent. And they did a really nice, independent, in my opinion, objective review of ICP.
Yeah.
And it's actually listed as a side chain amongst other giants in that ecosystem. So yeah, very impressed with them.
Jordan, as far as like places people should follow you on socials.
My personal handle is Last MJS, basically on everything. So X is where I'm mostly posting. All of the stuff my company does is basically on GitHub. So it's github.com/demergent-labs. That's where you can find the TypeScript and JavaScript SDK, the Python SDK for deploying your smart contracts or apps to ICP. Basically, GitHub and X is where I would spend most of my time.
Yeah, we appreciate it.